And thank you to all of you for the very kind birthday wishes. It was my birthday on Saturday. I worked pretty much all day Saturday and Sunday studying for teaching on Revelation on Sunday night. I'm not complaining because my wife said, it's your birthday. What do you want to do? I said, can I be honest? I want to sit in my study and study. I love doing that on Saturday and Sundays. I put on some classical music and I just study. And then I get to present it to you, what I learned. I get to present what I learned to you on Sunday nights. And I just did that last night, Revelation chapter 14. Finished up Revelation chapter 14, lesson 37. It's online if you didn't get it live. It's now online at worldviewtube.com. But the family took me out to dinner on Saturday night. Should I tell them what happened to Grandpa? Yeah, Logan says, yeah. Should I show him the video, Logan? No, he says no. Grandpa, that's my name, Brannon, but Grandpa. I even have a robe that says Grandpa my daughter gave me. We've been having a big time with my granddaughter. She says, yeah. She's 10 months old. She says, yeah. And she waves. You guys saw her waving the other night. And what else? Yeah, she burps. I taught her to burp. Wow. She growls. It went from burping to growling. After dinner started and after my birthday, we walked around one of our favorite stores. Actually, that was Friday night. We walked around one of our, late Friday night, walked around one of our favorite stores. No, that was Saturday. One of our favorite stores. And I'd just eaten. So, I mean, it was not just me and the child walking around with the wife and daughter. So I belched a little bit. And little did I know, Grandpa has to be very careful to be a good influence because I went, ugh. Next thing I heard, holding her in my arms was, eh. I'm like, really? So I went back to her, and she started doing back to me. And over the course of the next few hours, before we put her to bed that night, for the rest of the night, she was burping at me to catch my attention. Well, the next day it went from burping to growling. The burp turned into a growl. Now when she when I walk into the room, if I'm not paying attention to her, she starts to growl to catch my attention. And so anyway, she'll growl now. And it just taught all of us, we all have to be a very good example because she's like a sponge. She's going to mimic everything we do. So everybody has to be on their best behavior, which we should do anyway, I guess, right? But we've had a big time with her. So anyway, we go out to dinner Saturday night and the fam. And came in and sitting on my lap. I'm wearing a sport coat, of course, and a vest, and a pair of khakis, which is kind of my uniform. And this is a nice restaurant, you know. And all of a sudden, I think to myself, my leg feels awfully wet. And I lifted her up, and sure enough, her diaper had leaked all over Grandpa. And we hadn't even had dinner yet. And I'm not talking, do I even dare say it, Logan? It was both. That diaper leaked both. I just laughed it off. It was, and had a dinner. It was a great evening, but I got a little whiff every now and then during my dinner. So Grandpa was very happy to get back home and dump those in the laundry room and take a shower. But we got it on video, and everyone laughed about it, and a few close friends and family got the video, and they're all laughing. But there you go. That'll be something we tell her on our wedding day, the night we went to Grandpa's 56th birthday party, and she decided to do that. But she's a good kid, so she had to get cleaned up, too, when we got home. But we've been having a big time with her, that's for sure. All right, tonight we have David Pine. We're going to talk about the sit-down between Donald Trump and Zelensky. What do you think went on there? We've got the power going out in Spain, part of France, and one other country. Is that a little warning? Was it natural? Natural causes? Solar flares? Cyber hacking? I don't know. Should be a warning to all of us. Let's see. We're going to talk about the Houthis shooting down a lot of our drones. Quite a few of them, actually. Talk about that. North Korea, it's come out officially now. North Korea is fighting alongside Russia in Ukraine with the Ukraine-Russia war. We're also going to be joined by Professor Dan Eastman, Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi has an article out of American Thinker today about there seems to be an algorithm that was running in the election in Wisconsin. He provides the proof. We'll talk about it. But that would also tell you that there's likely algorithms running probably in other states, which has got me very concerned for the midterms, folks. Because, see, 2020 was too big to rig. Or, excuse me, 2016 was too big to rig. They thought they had the bag, I think. They fixed that problem in 2020 with ballots and all the ballot harvesting and mailing out ballots, right? 2024 was too big to rig again. That's what I think. So if people don't turn out in huge numbers for the midterm, will their cheating work? That's a big concern. We'll talk about that with professor and attorney and expert who's worked with many people you'd know on these cases related to voter fraud and algorithms and machines and ballot harvesting and ballots being mailed out, whatnot. Then we're going to be joined by, who else do I got, Logan? Mark Shaw. Remember Mark, the Mark Shaw, the expert on JFK, RFK. Well, remember when Tulsi Gabbard said in the cabinet meeting talking about we've got like 50,000 documents or something, however many it was, thousands that we found. And she said we've had all these people working to scan them in. We're going to release them. Well, he's gone through some of that. He found some very interesting things. So we're going to talk about some of the things he found that I think are continuing to show that the Warren Commission, we all know, is a fraud, that the fatal shot came from the front, not the back, wasn't Oswald. Oswald was likely a complete patsy, probably a patriot that was set up and dipped and painted as a communist, infiltrate communist causes, and then was set up by probably the CIA or whoever was behind it, maybe a collection of people. So we'll get to all that tonight. And then we had somebody else, one other person. Mark Shaw, David Pine, Dan Eastman. What I thought we had one other person booked for tonight. I always have my book over here. I can check. Oh, the truckers. We got a huge victory. President Trump signed an executive order. Shannon's going to join us. President Trump signed an executive order today. And I think, and you're going to hear from Shannon with American Truckers, thinks that our platform, our network with VCY America Radio, because my show airs on there at 1 o'clock Central every day, we were the first national outlet to pick up this story, he said. And he thinks that you, this audience, is responsible for bringing this to the president's attention in less than a month and an executive order signed today. The power of conservative talk radio, talk TV, right? The power of us, we, the people. Big show tonight. All right, before we do get to all that, don't forget, we're brought to you by you. You know I take it each and every day. In fact, I'll take one right here on the air. You know this is true. Bella Grace. It's a powerful elixir. And collagen with the peptides cut short. That's all there is to it, folks. That's all there is to it. Just rip that baby open, drink it up. Collagen, cat's claw, astaxanthin, 80 clinical trials. 80 clinical trials. By the way, are you enjoying the visit with Cayman? Yes, you are. You love Cayman, don't you? 80 clinical trials behind it. Check it all out, melissahousebg.com. I'll go there real quick. You know that we not only have the Bella Grace, but as you also know already, we have the skincare. Melissa loves the skincare. There's her little endorsement of the skincare. The Bella Grace Bella Trim, all natural weight management, takes on stubborn belly fat, and it also, according to reports, great for your cardiac health. She also loves the restorative sleep, helps her get to sleep, but also helps her stay to sleep. That's her big thing. So check all that out at melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Yes, go here, worldviewhealthcare.com or worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewhealthcare.com. We're talking about the power grid and things going down. Folks, you need to make sure that if you need meds, you have them. And you never know when you don't want to abuse antibiotics. You don't want to take them just when you get the sniffles or something, because you don't want your body to get where, look, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but I'm telling you my opinion. You don't want, in my opinion, to abuse antibiotics so that when you really need them, your body's become immune to them. So I'm careful not to do that. But when I need them, I need them. Right? And when you need them, particularly if it's something that's like pneumonia I had last fall, and it went to a temperature of 103. Okay, I was going to be in serious condition. It was going to get very serious very fast if I didn't get an antibiotic. Now, if the power grid goes down, or we go to war with China, or whatever happens, but even if the power grid just goes down for a few days inadvertently, and there is a disruption of services, and I need an antibiotic, and you need an antibiotic, what are you going to do? Well, when you have an emergency medical kit on hand, you have it. I also travel with these. You know, when we went out of town, I brought my emergency medical kits with me. I don't have to worry about going to a doctor. If I got really sick and could just treat myself with an antibiotic, I would do it. If I had to find a doctor, so be it. But I also, by the way, when I travel, I usually take 3 or 4 months of 6 months of freeze-dry food with me. Now, we can easily do that because we travel with a trailer or in the motor coach, and we bring that stuff with us. But I'm not fooling around. We're living in very uncertain times. Logan, what's Dolly got? We're living in very uncertain times. So get your medical kit, okay, at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com. Oh, boy, okay. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Throw that to me. I'll show them. My dog, Dolly, is such a little lady. She has her own makeup bag. She loves Melissa's little makeup bag, and she got a hold of it, and it was a demo or something she got for free. For whatever reason, this dog loves her makeup bag. She carries that thing everywhere. There you go. You can have your makeup bag. There's no makeup in it, but she carries that bag with her everywhere. All right, so there you go. Crazy dog. So get your medical kit. Let's see what else do we have real quick before we get right to it. The Gatatana, I take that every day, too, with my Bella Grace and my Numi. Oh, by the way, let me mention the Numi. Do you know that I put the Numi on my desk on Sunday? I wasn't feeling real well this weekend. I've really been struggling with allergies and my throat and hoarse and whatnot. And boy, on Saturday night, I wasn't feeling well. In fact, I laid down on Saturday before we went out to dinner, and I just thought if I could get a 10-minute power nap, maybe I can get over this. But I couldn't. I just didn't feel well. And so Sunday morning when I got up and I was sitting at my desk working, studying for Sunday night again, I studied Saturday and Sunday, I started taking Numi. I started taking my Numi every hour on the hour for the next several hours. Every hour on the hour, I started swishing with it. Every hour on the hour for the next several hours. By this morning, I have to tell you, I am feeling a lot better. And this is what Dr. Lana has told us, folks. So again, this has glutathione in it to detox your cells. It's very important. There's 162,000 studies at PubMed behind this. This is not a joke. 162,000 studies. So I just switched every hour in the hour for the next several hours while I was working at my desk. Just left it on my desk so I'd see it, remind me, oh, time to swig. And then swish it for 3 minutes, swallow it or spit it out. Go check it out. Swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. And when you purchase these products, they give back a percentage of each sale to us. So get a subscription like I do. I have a subscription to Bella Grace. I have a subscription to Numi. And I have a subscription to Gatatana. They're all there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, and they help keep this broadcast going. Joining me now is our national security expert and also expert on EMP, power grid, and so much more. And we have to talk about all of that with David Pine, with the lights going out in France, Spain. Where else, Logan? France, Spain, and one other place. Let's get right to it. Plus, the Pope, he's bringing people together. Zelensky and President Trump sitting down at the Pope's funeral. Joining me now is David Pine. David, thanks for being with us tonight.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start out with the power going down. France, Spain, and one other country. Is that, I'm getting reports, some people over in the UK emailing me saying they think it might be due to the crazy green agenda over there. I guess they were doing away with, what legitimate sources to generate electricity and energy, going more green, windmill, solar, whatnot. Is that what it is, or is there something more nefarious going on here? What are you hearing, or what do you think?
Well, it's unclear to me, what the cause is. I think that it's most likely just some kind of rare environmental, situation, perhaps a solar flare or an energy surge that caused the power grid to overheat. It is notable that all three countries, France, Spain, and Portugal, are NATO member states. So, of course, the possibility of kind of a Russian strategic signaling that they can take down NATO's power grid and U.S. power grid at the press of a button without warning. That certainly can't be dismissed. But I think it's more likely that it's some kind of naturally occurring event, such as a solar flare. But that just underscores the warning, that the vulnerability that the U.S. And our Western allies have to this type of event, whether it's naturally occurring, such as some kind of super geomagnetic storm, or a Russian or other adversarial, EMP attack, or rather a cyber attack.
What do you make of this picture? Let me go to it. What do you make of this picture from the Pope's funeral this last weekend? Zelensky and President Trump sitting down.
Yeah, well, I think it's notable that, French President Emmanuel Macron wanted to serve as Zelensky's wingman to shield him from, whatever talking down that Trump had in mind for him. And Trump told him politely to, stay away. It was just going to be a one-on-one. And essentially, what its Ukrainian Telegram channels are reporting is that Trump gave Zelensky a 10-day ultimatum that would expire on May 6th, shortly before Russia's victory day on May 9th. He has until that time to accept the U.S. peace framework as written, or else Trump is going to pull all U.S. personnel out of Ukraine and cut off all assistance aside from perhaps defensive intelligence aid. So, I think it was kind of a come to Jesus moment. I think Trump has been sending this message to Zelensky repeatedly, all throughout the last few months, especially, of course, at the February 28th White House Oval Office blow up, in which Zelensky denounced Trump twice as repeating Russian propaganda talking points. But Zelensky just, I think he's getting the message. I think he just thinks that he can do whatever he wants because he has the support of the EU, which is, a 30-nation or almost 30-nation grouping. I think it's maybe 27 or 28, and that Ukraine can make do without U.S. aid, at least in the short to medium term. But I think that the main reason that Zelensky is refusing to make even the most minor concessions to achieve peace is because he knows that there's a chance he could be assassinated by neo-Nazi elements within Ukraine, both in the government and the military, and he's worried about that happening.
All right. So what else are you watching that's got you concerned? I mean, we seem to be now got word that North Korea has been fighting with Russia there in between Russia and Ukraine, and North Korea has been heavily involved.
Yeah, as we've reported on your previous shows, there were about an estimated 11,000 North Korean troops, Korean People's Army troops that were deployed to the Kursk region to help Russia liberate, Ukrainian occupied territories in Kursk, which Russia announced just 2 days ago is now fully liberated, at least in terms of any populated areas. I think there's 3 small fields consisting of several square miles that Ukraine still controls. But yeah, this is the first time that both Russia and North Korea openly admitted that basically a full division worth of KPA troops were fighting alongside the Russian allies against Ukraine, and that is I don't view it the same way as a lot of Western analysts do, that it's some kind of threat or escalation. It's just evidence that the military alliance between Russia and North Korea is extremely real. And it's also been reported within the past couple weeks. I don't know if we've mentioned or not on your show yet, but there were about 120 to 150 Chinese troops. I think that we did discuss recently that PLA troops that were discovered to be operating against Ukraine as well on the front line.
Okay, now what do you make of the explosion here? Let me show it. The explosion in Iran. Plug it in. The explosion in Iran. What do you make of that?
It does have the sign of in every side of being some kind of ammonium nitrate explosion, and that's of course what we see in it's very useful for terrorist attacks, but it's also useful for explosives in conventionally armed missiles as well. So that was undoubtedly some kind of U.S. or Israeli sabotage attack. It could have been cyber. It very well could have been, some kind of commando raid just by, essentially spies and saboteurs on the U.S. or Israeli side. But yeah, it's happened a couple times recently, and if there's a way to fight Iran this way, this is the best way to do it. We don't want to have U.S. Missile strikes on Iran that could escalate to the nuclear EMP level. It should be cyber warfare or sabotage attacks as we're seeing here. So I can't say that I'm dismayed by seeing this occur.
No, you're right, exactly right. Okay, now what do you make about the drones? How many drones have the Iranian proxies shot down there near the Red Sea?
Well, yeah, the U.S. Has been losing an increasing number of Predator drones. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but I would assess that it's in the dozens. And our drones are a lot more expensive than Iranian drones. I think Iranian drones are maybe 24,000 a piece on average, and ours are probably pushing $1 million. I don't think it's much of a problem that we're losing drones. I mean, I'd much rather see us lose drones or missiles than manned aircraft. Certainly not a cause to continue the conflict. As we've discussed, we'd be much better off by ending our war with the Houthis through some kind of settlement with Gaza. Kind of an Egypt-supported resolution of the Gaza conflict. Egypt recently, I think it was just today, that they offered a five-year ceasefire that would entail the release of all U.S. and Israeli hostages in exchange for an undisclosed number of Palestinian detainees that are being held by Israel and have been held since October 7th. That it consists of men, women, and children. So I think that's really the key to resolve the proxy war with Iran as in our hot war with the Houthis, as well as the nuclear deal. I think the nuclear deal with Iran, those talks are proceeding quite well. Iran is very serious, very, very willing to cooperate, obviously, in the face of Trump's threats. And, of course, we're all hoping, I think, in terms of this program, that those threats are simply designed by President Trump to get the Iranians to make further concessions and are not the prelude to what it seems it could be, and that is a massively increased regional war in the Middle East. Mm-hmm.
On my radio show / TV show today, I went over to worldviewreport.com. I'll do it right now real quick as well. Worldview Report. And I have several stories over there that are of concern to me. You're a former military, so I get to get your take on this. But we've got 100 plus taken into custody at underground illegal nightclub in Colorado Springs. Fort Carson service members reportedly were involved. Supposedly they were providing security. On my Worldview Report broadcast tonight, the New York Post has put out that there's a self-described Hamas operative who infiltrated the U.S. Air Force and once boasted that he's, quote, been a terrorist since he's been a kid, in quote. He is 23, has dual citizenship between the U.S. and Lebanon. I guess he was involved in some vandalism of a synagogue and was lying about his loyalties to the U.S. Okay, so we got a guy connected back to Hamas in our military. We got military folks that should not be involved clearly with working with illegal invaders, providing reportedly security for an underground illegal nightclub of some kind. When we start looking at some of the things going on in our military, some of these stories that I'm coming up with, I'm very concerned that our military has given maybe training to some of these people, advanced their training set, number one. Number two, that they could be there to sabotage our military and or kill military. Isn't that what we saw at Fort Hood with the Islamic doctor there? So again, I'm really concerned that the Biden regime has cleaned out a lot of good people, patriots, MAGA people, America First people, Christians, all the people they wanted to clean out. They've let in all these people that are very troubling, and I think we're seeing a fruit of their worldview popping up here and there, which tells me I think we have a bigger Trojan horse inside our U.S. military than most Americans realize. What say you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been writing about that off and on for the last 20 plus years. When I was on Army headquarters staff, shortly after I left, I started writing on, with concern about the number of, non-citizens serving in our military, including, in some instances, illegal aliens. And we had, during the time, the Bush years, we had, some recruiting issues, obviously, with the ramp up in the war in Iraq and the surge. And the Bush administration actually had recruiting billboards reportedly in Spanish, trying to recruit Mexican nationals to to join the military, perhaps some promises of permanent residency. So thankfully, I think Trump's dismissed that nonsense. But we have had instances of moles and Muslim extremists and terrorists operating from within our own military, going back again almost 20 years. And the more we fight these wars or threaten to fight wars in the Middle East, the greater the chance that the Islamic terrorists will be activated. I think that we had, even 20 years ago, I think we had about at least several dozen Iranian terror cells operating within the U.S. And I think I would estimate there's many more now, not just Iranian, but Iranian aligned terror cells, including perhaps Hezbollah and other groups that would almost certainly be activated in the event we went to war with Iran. Certainly, if airstrikes lasted more than a single day, I think it was reportedly planned that Trump was going to bomb Iran for a full week along with Israel, and that would that could result in numerous terrorist strikes within the U.S. Hopefully, none on the scale of 9/11.
And that's not off the table yet either, is it? He's trying negotiations. So if you had a timeline for when he might have his hand pushed to do that, when would that be, you think?
Well, he said, it was around March 19th, I think, that he issued the 2-month ultimatum to Iran and said, you got 60 days basically to come to terms with us for a nuclear arms deal in which your nuclear program would be fully shut down along U.S. terms, which at this point would be zero enrichment by Iran, but they could buy low enriched uranium from another country, perhaps including Russia. Russia actually offered that this weekend, and then they could use those to maintain their nuclear reactors. I think that's a great deal. I don't think Iran's going to accept it. But I think that is the general timeline that we're working towards. And of course, we still have, I think 38% of our B-2 nuclear bomber force is deployed at Diego Garcia, along with a few B-52s. So, that's a warning indicator that Trump might be serious. But clearly, the maximum pressure campaign is working in terms of getting the Iranians to the table. And they actually offered to do an interim deal because the Trump deal, I think, took several years to fully negotiate with the JCPOA, and undoubtedly would take several months at minimum to negotiate a deal. So if Trump's willing, I think that he's likely willing to wait for negotiations to play out. But as we've seen with Russia, his whether it's his attention span or his patience level, it's not indefinite. It's right around in the 2 to 3 month range, I think, for max. So, I would think that there hasn't been a substantial movement towards some kind of, at least an interim deal along the lines that Iran is talking about, but with U.S. terms, while a final deal is being worked out, by May or probably June at the latest. Then I think the military option is has a much higher chance of materializing.
Well, I just think people have a window here, David. We've been trying to tell people for years. 2016 is when we started offering up emergency supplies, emergency freeze-dried food, different supplies, because we'd been stocking up heavily since 2013. I mentioned it on the air. In 2016, people said, what'd you get? Where'd you get it? What should I get? What's your checklist like? I said, how about if we just put it up on a website? And we negotiated with our vendors, got a good wholesale discount. We resell it at retail at a reasonable price. We use the profit difference to help generate the 40,000+ a month we need to keep this network going. And so we've been telling people since 2016, you better get ready. We're living in very uncertain times. We just went up to Northern Illinois and then to Wisconsin, and I did a worldview rally. I had over 1,000 people. I had 1,000 chairs set out. People were standing in the back. And when I went up there, we pulled a 16-foot enclosed trailer with all of our camera gear and switchers and all that. And I had the guys load the trailer with about 6 months of freeze-dried food. I threw in some of our solar generator stuff. I threw in our crank radios. I threw in our satellite phone. I'm like, you think I got this stuff at my home base? You think I'm not going to travel with this stuff? And that's the way I am. I don't know. I mean, maybe the audience thinks I'm just selling them product, but Logan can testify. I'm not kidding. When I go out of town, I pack enough stuff with me. So if it happens when I'm out of town, I'm not sitting there twiddling my thumbs trying to figure out what am I going to do. I might have to be hunkered down in a hotel somewhere, but at least I'm going to have several months of food, all I got to do is somehow start a little fire, boil the water, and cook it. So I'm not going to starve to death, But I'm so concerned about the fragility of our grid and terrorist attacks and just the anarchists that are in the country that could hit power substations and whatnot, that when I travel, I usually travel with several months of freeze-dried food, which is not hard when you get a 3-month bucket. One bucket's 3 months, right? So it doesn't take too many buckets with you for the crew that's with you that you're all going to at least have a couple months worth of food. What do you, as a guy that does EMP and power grid and all, what do you make of that?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I'd love to have the same situation with myself. Maybe I should buy a trailer. I don't need to travel, and speak on the road as like you. My speaking engagements are probably twice a year, maybe 3 times a year max. And I'm well stocked here at my house. But yeah, I've been stocking up since 2012. I think that obviously this Iran thing is. Again, I think it's more of a crisis of our own making. I don't think there's any imminent need to strike Iran. I think Iran's, as Peter Pry and James Woolsey assessed, I think they've had nuclear missiles for some time. They may not have nuclear ICBMs, and we don't want to incentivize them further to develop those. But they likely do have super EMP weapons and satellites over the U.S. And even if they don't, it's been assessed that they don't have, it hasn't been assessed that they have the ability to take out all of our critical infrastructure using cyber alone. That capability is only Russia, China, and North Korea. But they certainly could take out our grid for a considerable amount of time. And that would result in, minimally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of American deaths, perhaps even millions, even if we were to be able to restore it within a period of months. Mm-hmm. And that's something we just don't want to see. I mean, we don't want to see more Americans die than died in all of our wars in our entire history combined. And that could happen within just months, a few months of being out of power. Yep. So, when you live in a glass house, you don't want to throw stones. And that's kind of our situation. We have amazing offensive capabilities. We have, the third strongest nuclear triad in the world. We have one of the strongest conventional militaries. We have, arguably the best Navy. And in terms of our aircraft carriers, which of course are getting more vulnerable in terms of, China and whatnot, and hypersonic missiles. But we have almost nothing when it comes to nuclear missile defense against nuclear missile attack. And that's something, of course, President Trump's nobly trying to remedy with this Golden Dome project, which likely will take after his presidency to deploy, although certainly with the emergency efforts, and with his own funding, through emergency funding, through an emergency order, he could potentially get fielded before the end of his term. There's no hardening against the EMP attack, and there's very little defense against cyber attack. So, any one of these situations, I think Russia, we're much, much safer. I think it's very likely that Russia will attack us while we're continuing to normalize relations with them and perhaps cut off the Zelensky regime until Zelensky's been replaced. Not sure if that'll ever happen, of course, since he's a dictator without elections. But mainly, of course, with China over Taiwan, because I do think that's very likely to materialize by October. And, if President Trump reacts like I think he does and will and negotiates some kind of confederation deal or even accepts Chinese terms in return for, similar concessions, getting them out of our hemisphere and, of course, ceding the Panama Canal to the U.S., cutting off all support for communist Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, and perhaps even their ports and spice stations in South America, then I think we'll be safe. But there's just too much volatility, I guess I'll say, in the Trump administration. There's these two wings. There's the MAGA wing that's kind of aligned with President Trump, and then there's the neocon wing that's led by Waltz and Rubio. that threatens to push us in a World War III direction, either with Iran, China, or both.
Yep. All right. Finally, one last thing. Then we have the issue of just anarchist. Listen to what the governor of Illinois said in the last day or so.
Female athlete looks like muscular, strong.
Wait, I have something else running. Hold on, guys. I do that sometimes. Let's see. What else do I got running? It's always Worldview 2. Since we put that player on there. All right, here we go. Let's back it up. The governor of Illinois. Here we go.
Upon which history turns. Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption. But I am now.
Well, there you go. Mass disruption. There you go. A governor of Illinois. Closing comment?
Well, I think he's just the latest instance of a Democrat leader calling for anarchy and violence. We saw that with Schumer, of course, with 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices. We've seen it with the Democrats' support of the over 500 riots during the BLM riots after the George Floyd protests that included an attempt at insurrection at the White House, in which far left protesters identifying with BLM and Antifa were attempting to lynch the president and the first family. And it's continuing. I mean, just the Democrats have they're at 27% approval, kind of an all-time low in approval. But they're a threat, and they're a threat, in terms of left-wing violence. We've seen no right-wing violence ever since the January 6th. But we've seen many instances of left-wing violence. We have protests here locally, kind of in Salt Lake City, Doge protests, AOC protests, all kinds of crazy leftists. Thankfully, it hasn't gotten too violent since the BLM riots. But the Democrats, despite their unpopularity, they have a real decent chance of retaking the House of Representatives. And at that point, they'll be in a position to sabotage the Trump legislative agenda and perhaps even impeach the president for a third term.
Which is what Schumer's saying they're going to do. Schumer's bragging about that.
That's right. Yeah, and it's possible they could take the Senate as well, although I think we're probably narrowly favored at this point to at least maintain a 50-50 nominal majority with Vance breaking the tie.
Here it is, folks. dpine.substack.com, dpine.substack.com. And of course, his X handle is @AmericaFirstCon, @AmericaFirstCon, to follow him on X. David Pine, we always appreciate our time with you. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Brandon. Always a pleasure.
You too, my friend. David Pine checking in. Check him out there at dpine.substack.com. All right, before we go to Shannon with American Truckers on this great executive order signed today by President Trump, I want to remind you, as I said, I do take my Gatatana every day. I put a half a scoop on Dolly's food every day, and this is very, very real. This has got 5 clinical trials. We did a new spot for it. I want to share it with you, and then we're going to go right away to Shannon. Watch this spot. Pay close attention, folks. Here we go. July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from this from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign, and Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy, I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer, and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is the phytoplankton is microscopic. It's God's microscopic food. And the Gadatiana is the most nutritionally comprehensive strain phytoplankton in the world. David Hunter studied phytoplankton for 20 years because he worked for Tom Harper and he was there in person and witnessed Tom's recovery. It's about getting pure nutrition inside your cells. And what happens, your body balances again or goes back to homeostasis. And when your body is pH balanced or in homeostasis, disease can't grow. It is literally microscopic, pure single cell plant food with protein and omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6 fatty acids, with amino acids and vitamins and minerals. 1 scoop a day. There's 90 billion plant cells in here just for everyday nutrition and energy and, cognitive support, because this is God's pure nutrition.
Go to melissahousegpa.com today. Discover the science and learn more about the wonderful benefits of Gaditana phytoplankton. That's melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com.
All right, guys, we got some great news. Good news. Look at this. American truckers. Here we go. Donald Trump signing executive order today requiring all truck drivers in America to read and speak English. Wow. I'm so happy about this. Congratulations, Shannon, because I don't think this would have happened without you and American truckers. I don't think this would have happened. Do you?
Well, I appreciate that compliment, but I think there was a lot of prayers that went up for this. And so first, I think the Lord moved a mountain for us today. And he did that because there's a lot of broken spirits in the trucking industry right now. There's a lot of people crying out for solutions and for hope. And I'm just thankful that our God listens, our president listens, and we're getting this executive order today. So this is a great first step in curing some of these problems that we've got. But it's only the first step, and we're celebrating with everyone today. We think this is an American first type of move, and we're just proud to be a part of it.
Here's a headline over at the Blaze. Highway to hell, mass influx of foreign-born truckers cause carnage on American roads March 10th. What's the latest? I think I just read about another crash the other day, over the weekend, did I not? With a tractor-trailer truck?
Yeah, they get reported on as often as we can find them. A lot of them aren't in the mainstream media, and so we have to do a lot of research and digging, and you really catch some lucky breaks from our followers sending in tips and hints about stuff that's going on, and we do some investigation and we find out that there's a deeper story to them, and that usually involves either a work visa or a guy that didn't speak English, and so these are happening every day. And so we're only limited to finding these because of the resources that we have available.
Now, tell me what you know about this executive order as far as requiring the drivers to speak English. How are they going to regulate this, and when does it take effect?
So they'll be given a test probably on the roadside by the officers. I haven't seen the executive order. I'm anxious to read the full details of it. But we would expect that the roadside enforcement officers would conduct a test on the roadside like they did back in 2014 and 2015. And if you're unable to communicate with the officers, if you're unable to read road signs, then they'll put you out of service. We also have a bill right now going through the state legislature in Oklahoma that goes a little bit further than even this executive order, and it requires the vehicle to be impounded. And so we're going to have a situation here where a lot of trucks are being put out of service, and we're going to need a clear solution also, or we're going to need some clear rules for these officers about what to do with these guys that put out of service.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's pray that this does something. That's for sure. Now, I have video footage. This is what I saw over the weekend on your X account. Look at this, guys. This is in Texas. Here we go.
acaban de dar en la madre aquí en el 285.
Extintores, extintores. No hay más extintores. Extintores, extintores.
Yo espero estar bien, nomás. No tengo un chingazo, pero yo espero estar bien, para si pueden sacar el video.
Did the driver survive that, Shannon?
We don't know the full details of what happened to the drivers in that accident. What we do know is this is Highway 285 in Texas, down in the oil field, kind of a Permian Basin area. And there's an entire TikTok channel dedicated to accidents on this highway because of the lack of training and qualification of these drivers and their lack of English proficiency. And so this highway is very treacherous right now.
Well, I think
so hopefully this legislation will help make it safer.
I think I just found another one on your X account. Look at this one. This was on the 26th of April.
This is great. You okay? For sure. Yeah. I was coming this way, and I see the whole thing. It's crazy. You tried to swerve, yeah, but couldn't. Wow. Oh, yeah, this is great.
Wow. What do you know about that one?
Again, we're just reposting stuff that's sent in to us. We don't have all the details of the accident on that. Just when we see that a guy is lacking English skills or proficiency, we're quick to put it up and give an example of exactly what we've been advocating for.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good news is the executive order today by President Trump. Drivers have to be able to pass an English proficiency test. And the good news is you're getting a lot of attention. I mean, I would say 2 months ago, you probably weren't getting a whole lot. Now, all of a sudden, you're everywhere, right?
Yes, sir. We've been very blessed to have some really good media coverage as of late. It's really helped us to get this message out, and we couldn't have done it without you guys and with your listeners. And so we're very appreciative of everybody just talking about this and sharing our videos and sharing our information and just telling their friends about what's going on our highway.
Well, because if I remember correctly, we were the first national outlet with our 74 radio stations and TV to pick this up and interview you said back then. So I like to think that our listeners, because we know our listeners, a lot of them are truckers on the radio. We're flooding your X account and sending this thing around. And we were getting flooded with emails and texts from them. So I think it shows the power of talk radio, of talk TV, and the power of patriots and Americans to get a job done. I mean, I didn't think when we first started talking to you, we'd have an executive order by today, April 28th. Did you?
Amen. Amen. I know. No, God is a good God. And so he does things faster sometimes, and his plans are better than my plans. I know that. That's
for sure. And this is just the beginning, I think. I think this is just the beginning. I know you've seen the footage where the White House, President Trump in the White House is, I think I have some footage here, but I'll find it, where President Trump in the White House today has put out, here we go, here it is, signs of some of these illegals right there in the White House and showing their crimes. Look at this, folks.
Incredible.
Now, I'm going to stop right there. Do you guys realize what they've just done? I don't know if any of you are, I don't know if we're the only ones to make commentary on this, but look at that right there. Okay. What you guys all need to understand is that building behind you is the old executive office building. Okay. And of course, that's obviously the White House. This is the north lawn of the White House, right? That's the old, that's the executive West Wing. That's the West Wing you see right there. Okay. You go back, you see the White House itself, then the West Wing. Now, these green tents, okay, as you come into the White House, these green tents, that's all known, traditionally that was called Pebble Beach, because that was where they had a bunch of pea gravel, and the mainstream media would set up there. And when I was back there in 2003, I think it was, those tents, I don't remember those tents ever being there. But since they've built all these tents and now these guys, they stay there permanently. But that is your mainstream corporate media, okay? That's your mainstream corporate media. So these signs now have been put out right where the mainstream corporate media has no choice but to see them. And I have to wonder if they're not covering their camera shot and trying to lift their cameras up to get around the fact you got these illegal invaders arrested for sexual assault, murder, sexual battery on a child, wanted for murder, rape, sexual assault of a child, lewd and lascivious acts with a minor, rape. I mean, all, and that's going right there down the corporate media row on the White House lawn. That's pretty fascinating that the White House is doing this. Again, the things they do are really quite remarkable when you think about what they're doing.
Absolutely. Immigration has absolutely destroyed the American trucking industry as we've known it. Uncontrolled immigration. Look, immigration is not a bad thing, but when you don't have a cap, when you don't have a limit on the number of people that you can put in, when you're not training the people and you're just dumping them in just for the sole purpose of reducing wages and cutting costs, then it becomes very dangerous. And we saw that with our highway safety. We've also seen it be very devastating economically to our American truck drivers and these American trucking companies. And so, there's a list of other things that we sent to Secretary Duffy saying, hey, we need you to address this. Number one was English proficiency. And so today's a great victory because number one's off the list.
What's number 2 and 3? What's next?
Yes. So the number 2 is to revoke and ban all these non-domicile CDLs that were issued to unvetted, unqualified, and untrained drivers. And so, somewhere along 2019, they changed the law to allow our state DMVs to start issuing commercial driver's licenses to non-citizens. We're asking the president to revoke those. The third thing is to either ban the use or implement a cap on the use of foreign commercial driver's licenses. The USMCA trade agreement allows Canadian trucks to come into the United States and allows Mexican trucks to come into the United States, but we don't have any trucks going into Mexico. And so because there's no reciprocity, why are we allowing all of these drivers to come up here? And we can tell you why they're doing it. They're doing it for cheaper labor. And so we're asking the president either to, if we can't go down there, ban them, don't allow them to come up here, or at least put a cap on how many can come so that it doesn't devastate our American workers. And then we need criminal statutes. This is a huge victory today for Scott Miller and his widow, Deanne Miller, that we talked about last time I was on your show. Also for Mark Bryant and his ex-wife, LaDonya Bryant, and their kids. There's a victory here today because both of those men were killed by drivers who didn't have proficient English, couldn't read highway signs, didn't have a proper driver's license, and wasn't properly trained. And so I'm very happy that we were able to advocate and get a victory for those families today.
Amen. Amen. Great work, Shannon. I want to point people to your X account to follow you if you want to follow them and the over-the-road professional drivers, folks that some of you are listening, but those that point them to follow this group. AmericanTruckers.com. AmericanTruckers.com is their website, or you can follow them at ATU Truckers, at ATU Truckers on X. And of course, we're going to have Shannon back because I think there's going to be more progress made. I think there's going to be more victories coming out of the White House with President Trump and Secretary Duffy. But this is a great one today. And I want to congratulate you, Shannon. And I want to congratulate our audience because I think they played a major role in this. So congratulations to all of you.
They absolutely did. And you did too, sir. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for all you're doing. Look forward to having you back with some more good news. Shannon checking in, folks. AmericanTruckers.com. AmericanTruckers.com. Joining me now is attorney and professor of economics and a host here at worldviewtube.com of the Dan Eastman Show. Dan Eastman, it's on every day here at 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern Standard. It's a great show for understanding what's going on with economics and where we're headed as a nation. He joins me today because he's also, as we know, an attorney, and he's been up to his eyeballs fighting election fraud in, particularly Wisconsin. Today, I read an article by Jerome Corsi saying there seems to be evidence of an algorithm running in Wisconsin. And of course, that wouldn't shock me because isn't that what Dr. Doug Frank and so many others have been telling us, these algorithms? He joins me now to talk about it because he's worked with many people, including, I think, Sidney Powell on these kind of issues as well. So I called him because he's an attorney, he's an expert on this, and he's in Wisconsin. He's a Wisconsinite. He joins me now. Dan, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Hey, how about that crowd? I was glad you were able to get up there and greet our audience and listening friends who joined us at the Waukesha Expo Center. Can you believe that crowd?
It was a great turnout. It looked like over 1,000 people.
That's
and
right.
It was very exciting. Standing room only. I was standing in the back. There was no chairs.
Right. That's right. It was wonderful. I'm glad you could be there. Did you run into some people you knew?
I did. Old friends and new friends. It was good to see, and I think there's a very strong fellowship here in Wisconsin, and people are looking for a scriptural basis, and I think it's an important message that we're delivering to the people. So it was good. It was a good program.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you were there. Before we go to the algorithm in Wisconsin, how about the judge that got arrested the other day in your state for wanting, I guess, to hide out illegal invaders? And now you got another one saying that she's thinking about boycotting. I don't know if she's just going to shut down her courtroom or what, but Wisconsin just keeps getting in the news.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I think it has a lot to do with as the left has framed our democracy. They've basically made local politics the essence of the intensity is coming out of local politics. And what we're seeing with these judges, I'm an attorney, I'm an officer of the court, and my obligation is to give deference and respect to the court because I am an officer of the court. But it's troubling to see when a judge is marched off in handcuffs for violating federal law. And I think that what we're seeing nationally is this creep with judges creeping toward this idea that the Congress and the president or the legislature and the governor are advisory. And that's a very European thing because in Europe, judges have the ability to override a parliament or a prime minister. If there's a law passed and the judges don't like it, they can modify. We don't have that in the U.S. We have a separation of powers where the judiciary traditionally is to look at the laws to make sure it was properly promulgated, properly signed into law, and properly administered. But what the judiciary in America doesn't have is the ability to put its own thoughts and policies into effect and negate our democracy, which is legislative and executive. And that's what we're seeing more and more across the nation. You see this with all of these federal judges so eager to stop President Trump with all of these temporary injunctions and all of these equity actions. And that really puts our democracy and our form of government, a representative form of government, at very high risk because the judges tend to think that they can erase or rearrange the democratic process of legislation that's signed into law by a governor or a president. And that's what this particular judge, it's sad. I know she's a passion for this immigration issue, and she, in a former life, ran a very large immigration or a social services organization that's passionate about immigration. But notwithstanding, when you assume the silk robe and the wooden mallet and you become a judge, your job is to enforce the law and interpret and enforce the law the way the legislature and the president or the governor established. And this idea that you can just transcend that because you have a different view of the world is wrong, and she found out the hard way. I mean, it's very embarrassing to watch the video of this poor judge in her robe, handcuffed and thrown into a vehicle and whisked away by the FBI. You don't see that every day in America, and you don't see it in Wisconsin. And I can't remember the last time a judge was arrested on the bench. There have been judges who run afoul of the law from time to time and end up in trouble. But certainly the optic of a judge being paraded off in handcuffs was stunning. But it points to the problem. Our judges are elected here in Wisconsin every 6 years. They're up for election. Supreme Court is a 10-year term. And I think the people have a better sense today that if you're going to assume the role of being able to put people in jail or take their property or penalize them, that you have to at least follow the law yourself. You can't be above the law. You have to be the law. And that's why that was a very embarrassing story, and we'll see where it plays out. But I think it should give all members of the bench a pause to think about, what is my role here? It's to interpret the law. And they don't necessarily have to be strict constructionists like I'd prefer, but they have to pardon me, I just clicked my box. They have to follow the law. And obviously this was an egregious example, and I think it will have an effect on the judiciary. If you don't want to end up being marched out in handcuffs, then perhaps you have to respect federal and state law. So we'll see where that goes.
Well, let's definitely see where that goes. Okay, here's the article at American Thinker. I linked it over at worldviewreport.com. Here it is. A newly discovered algorithm in Wisconsin voter file is indisputable evidence of criminal election fraud by Jerome Corsi. All right. I'm not shocked by this because this is what Dr. Doug Frank and others have told us for some time. What do you make of this?
Well, it's an interesting article, and I think Dr. Corsi is correct, and I think Dr. Paquette, the gentleman who did the work, is correct. We've been tracking this issue for a long time in Wisconsin, and it kind of goes back to the 2016 election, where when Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin to Donald Trump by 20,000 votes, a Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, with 1% of the votes, sued for a hand recount of 3+ million ballots because they were alleging, and this was Perkins Coie alleging this, that the machines rigged the vote and you have to count them by hand to figure out who won. Well, we had a recount. It was done by a machine. But even back then, the arguments are that these electronic digital systems are defective. And when you think about how states, like the state of Wisconsin and other states, we are required under HAVA, Help America Vote Act, a federal act, that a state administrator, here our Wisconsin Elections Commission, has to maintain a statewide digital database. Every state does. Well, when HAVA was passed, the states didn't have digital databases for voter rolls. So they were given the kernel of these databases by the federal government and implemented them, and that's what has become WisVote and other state systems. But nobody really understands how those databases work, and they don't understand who's maintaining them. Now, we have open records requests that show that the 4 companies who maintain the Wisconsin voter roll are based in India, in East India. And they're not vetted, and they're not, there's no security. They're just in the back door of the system all day long, administering, whatever it is they do. They fix the code, they update things, they do all the administrative stuff. But it shows you how porous that system is. And when Dr. Corsi and, of course, Dr. Paquette are looking at data, and this is data purchased from the state of Wisconsin and analyzed, there's nothing magic here. What you're finding are all of these anomalies that suggest that system has got some very serious security problems. Now, we looked at this in 2020 when you had mentioned I represented Sidney Powell in the state of Wisconsin, and we provided within that lawsuit all sorts of affidavits from experts, Dr. Frank and other people, well-known national figures, and they're all coming to the same conclusion, that the results statistically don't make any sense. So when you look at that level in 2020, and then we had Jay Valentine and we had Jeff O'Donnell actually testified at Janelle Branson's Assembly Elections Committee, and they talked about the same thing. There's all these strange patterns. You get 23,000 people with the same cell phone number. Well, that doesn't make sense, but It's in the data. We look at when we started this thing in 2020, we had like 6 million, or so names in the database, and there are only 4 million people in Wisconsin old enough to vote. Well, today we have 8.2 million names in the database 4 years later. We have not doubled the population size of Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, the 10-year census says we've got 210 more people than we did 10 years ago. Very flat thing. But yet you go from 6,000, 7,000. Now we're at 6 million, 7 million. Now it's 8 million names in a state that only has 6 million people and 4 million old enough to vote. What's going on in the data? So you say, okay, well, let's take a look. You get resistance from our Wisconsin Elections Commission like you wouldn't believe. First of all, if you want to take a peek, a one-day snapshot is $12,500. That's what it costs you to take one snapshot of these 8.1 million names. And then, of course, you've got to have a great big platform to run it on. That's why we use Valentine's system, the Fractal system. We use the Titan system, Peter Berninger's system. You got to have these big data crunchers to figure out what's in there. And when you start crunching, that's what Dr. Paquette and Dr. Corsi are seeing. They're seeing all these anomalies. Like if you think about our curve, we have, let's say, 8 million names. If you start out with the first 3 million, they go sequential, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to 3 million. From 3 million to about 6 million, they have gaps of 100 blank parking spaces. And then within the parking spaces, you start to see where they're inserting fake voters. The phantom voters, we call them phantom voters. So whoever's doing this creates an array and leaves parking spaces, and whoever's doing it is plugging in these phantom voters. And those phantom voters, a ballot shows up at the local clerk in that person's name and address, and that person either doesn't exist or they didn't even know they voted. Nothing. Somebody is inside of the system. And that's why 4 years ago we want a full forensic audit. What does that mean? Well, if you're in a business or a corporation, a full forensic audit means you go into the books, you look around, you do a deep dive. No deep dive. There has been no forensic audit. You can ask Justice Gableman. He went through this whole process of an investigation. He issued 2 interim reports. They blew him to smithereens, and now he just lost his law license for 3 years because he made the mistake of looking into the data. Okay, so this is where we are. Janelle Brandtjen lost her assembly seat. Tim Ramthun basically gave up his seat to run for another office, but he's been isolated. All of the voices that ask for accountability in data are silenced. They're silenced throughout the state. And it's not just Wisconsin. This is going on all over the country. So what you know is with the people who run the election administration, they don't want you looking inside the database. They don't want you looking inside the machines. They don't want you looking at the poll books. What they want you to do is go to the polling place and you fill out the ballot, you put it through a little machine, you put your sticker on, you go home. That's all you do. You vote, you go away. But they don't want people asking questions. And we see this over and over again. Over the last 4 years, I've been involved in over 12 cases, litigation cases, where we ask simple administrative law questions. What about this? What about that? There has been very, very little that the courts have done to allow anybody to look inside the box. So that raises issues. So the big question is, should DOJ come in and take a look? I think that would be practical because these are the election databases used for federal elections. And if it's a federal election, and of course it's mandated by HAVA, which is a federal statute, then DOJ ought to come in and take a look around, and they should look. Are these anomalies that Dr. Paquette is noticing, are they just statistical anomalies, or is it the way data moves? What is it? If it's an innocent thing, it should be published. Look, this is an innocent thing. You know, you're wrong. Go away. But they don't. You can't see in there. See, and that's the problem. And that's the big blind problem. We have digitized our elections from the database through the machine counting systems to the e-poll books to the reporting to the, when they report it to the media, it's all digital and it's all behind a curtain. I've got a case right now where we're trying to see the machine images from November 3rd, 2020. This is like ancient history, okay? I mean, they're yellowing. These images are yellowing. County's not giving those images up. There is no way. They are not going to let you see those images of those ballots. Now, why not? It's 4 years ago. It's 2 presidential races behind. The Smithsonian probably would be interested in knowing. The people aren't going to see that. And, we're dealing with that case as I speak right now. Another thing we have, another case pending is we've got a case in Milwaukee where we asked the clerk, the state law says, look, if there's a reasonable doubt that a person doesn't live somewhere, you have to send them a postcard. And if you don't get the postcard back, they have to be turned inactive. Okay, just turn them inactive. They have to show up. 31,000 people. That city is not mailing out those postcards. And this litigation has been grinding and grinding. We're on appeal on an issue. They're not going to mail out those postcards. And the statute says they have to. But they won't, because nobody wants anybody looking inside the black box. Your job is to show up at the poll and vote and go home. And you're supposed to believe. You're just supposed to believe. But the minute you ask questions, that's when you get burned down. And that's a sad reality. We have digitized our democracy and effectively removed it from the demos, the people. It's removed. The people don't control this process. It's just like theater. You go, you watch, you go home. Then you see who wins at 8:30 at night. So it's a problem. And I think Dr. Corsi's brave in writing that article. And I know I've worked with people who've done a deep dive on Dr. Paquette's work, and it's a very solid work. And that alone should be the trigger for an investigation or a forensic audit. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Well, here's the article at American Thinker. If folks want to go read it. A newly discovered algorithm Wisconsin voter file is indisputable evidence of criminal election fraud. So let me ask you this in closing. People should care everywhere because we're talking about presidential elections here as well. So Wisconsin is a swing state. So this could be the difference between, say J.D. Vance winning or AOC and Bernie Sanders winning, if that's what the matchup is in 2028. But let's also talk about the fact that if they can do this in one state, they're likely doing it in others, correct?
Well, they are, because the HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, requires states to have a statewide digital database. And they all have one. And then the question is, who's the vendor? Who provides it? Who does the coding? Can you see the coding? It should be public. Well, what is it? It's just a name and address and a bunch of data fields. Why is that coding so secret? I mean, the system's hardened, it's locked down. Although actually in Wisconsin, it's not. Part of our WisVote database is a subset called MyVote. And we've had controversy in Wisconsin. People can go into MyVote. If I have your name and birthday and address, somebody can go in and have your ballot mailed to Bulgaria. And people have done this. And there was the assistant Milwaukee clerk was convicted of making up 3 fake military ballot voters in the database. She puts fake names in and triggers the mailing through 3 other clerks to Janelle Branchen's house. And she gets convicted of that. I think it was 3 misdemeanors and a felony. And you have other citizens who've done this and gotten in trouble for it. So that's the point. You have a system that has no username, no password, no 2-step authentication, and you can go and it says, warning, if you misuse this, it's a crime. But this is a portal, and anybody can have a ballot mailed to anybody or anywhere without any username and password. And this is the problem, and all across the country.
And so how concerned are you about voter fraud being so bad in 2020, 2025, 26? Yeah, wow, next year already. Woo! 2026 being so bad that the Dems win the House or the Senate or both, because Chuck Schumer's saying if they get back power, they're going to impeach Trump. So what do you think is going to happen in 2026 midterms?
Well, here's the problem. When we went to mailed ballots and opened the barn door, in Wisconsin, you have to at least go to MyVote and pretend you're somebody, or you have to call the clerk and they'll mail a ballot out. But it's all in the mailed ballots. It's the ability to have a clerk mail a ballot somewhere that it shouldn't go and be marked by somebody who shouldn't mark it and return it to the clerk, who will never disenfranchise a voter, so they put it in the stack for counting. And secondly, what we found in Wisconsin in this April election, unbelievable numbers of ballots mailed to Snowbird. Wisconsin snowbirds in Florida were mailed out, but never made it back. They were intercepted at the post office and disappeared. So those people thought they voted, they put it in the mailbox, send it back to the clerk. It never made it. It never made it back. So those votes weren't counted. So that's a second problem with the mail system for ballots. Now, I've been saying...
Which, by the way, a lot of those people likely, if they are snowbirds, means they have 2 houses, which means they have money, which means they likely are not interested in big government and socialism, which means they likely vote conservative. So the conservative votes were just canceled out.
Well, you could make that argument, and I've been arguing because it's a federal crime to use the postal system to commit a crime. It's postal fraud. Basically, if you use the U.S. postal system to commit a crime, that's a crime, and a lot of people have been convicted of postal fraud. That's usually how you get a federal conviction. So President Trump could issue an order today, an executive order saying you may not use the post office for mailed ballots, because that if there's fraud involved, you're using a federal tool to commit the fraud. So therefore, you can't use the mailbox. You got to do FedEx, or you got to do private carrier, pigeons, whatever, but you can't use the mail. And if you did that, you would stop the vast majority of this mail ballot fraud. And of course, the left would go nuts. I mean, they absolutely would not tolerate you stopping the use of the U.S. mail. But, Jones down in Virginia, I forget his first name, but it's Mr. Jones, has done a lot of research on U.S. postal mail fraud. And I think it would be very, very useful to review that and have President Trump just say, look, you can't use the mail. If the clerk wants to send you a ballot in Florida, you're going to send it, FedEx or UPS or some private carrier. Then it's on you, But using the U.S. mail in some states like Nevada and others, and Colorado, everybody gets mailed a ballot. And when you think about it, those ballots circulate. Like in Milwaukee, they have a street value of $40. So if you find a ballot at an apartment complex, some Section 8 apartment complex, and you have a common mail hall, there's a ballot laying there, and you grab it, you take it to the right people, you get $40 cash. And the right people fill in the right candidate and mail it back to the clerk. Well, the clerk doesn't know. You send it out to Joe Blow, 123 Main Street. Somebody intercepts it, gets $40 for it. A ballot mill fills it out and mails it back. That happens. It happens a lot. When you look at this early voting phenomenon with mail and drop boxes, that's where the fraud is happening. It's hard to cheat when you're going into your clerk's office early voting and fill out a ballot and give it back to the clerk. It's pretty hard to cheat, and you can only cheat once. I mean, she'll see you. Or the same thing without a polling place. Now, you can't sneak in more than once, or you can put a fake mustache on or something. But the reality is, it's not scalable. The big scalability is when they mail these ballots out, they get intercepted and returned. That's
so ballot harvesting is the big threat.
Well, ballot harvesting means you're going around grabbing, getting other people's ballots and turning them in. This is mailing ballots out. The clerk believes they're mailing it to a legitimate voter. The reality is it's not a legitimate voter.
Okay, so this is different than ballot harvesting. So this is actually just overprinting ballots and sending them to just about anybody.
Well, in some states, Wisconsin, you have to make a request, which you can do on My Vote without a username or password. So anybody can go do it. In Nevada and Colorado, they mail them to everybody. And, we don't want they're like currency. You mail out a ballot, that's worth $40, I'll tell you.
ProfessorEastman.com, right?
Right.
ProfessorEastman.com, ProfessorEastman.com. And he's here every day, 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern at worldviewtube.com with the Eastman Report. It's the Dan Eastman Show. Eastman Financial is the official name.
It's worth tuning in because they talk about federal budget and federal problem we have. And it's worth tuning in, folks.
It absolutely is. It is. He's very informative. You know what he's talking about, and you might want to pay attention because it's coming. I'm afraid. I'm sorry. I think the collapse is coming. I don't know, frankly, how we can avoid it. I really don't.
Well, I think President Trump's on the right track. If he can get stabilized tariffs that are sort of like entrance fees to sell into the U.S. and take everybody who makes less than $200,000 a year off of the income tax, there will be rejoicing in the streets for decades if people don't have to bother with filling out a tax.
Well, then there'll be also capital to expand those small businesses, right?
Everybody will be able to keep what they earn and spend it the way they want. You're not sending half of it off to the government. It would be a blessing beyond belief. So it's really a good time to encourage President Trump and your congressional representatives to support this, because when we look at $36 trillion in debt and $2.5 trillion a year in annual deficit, that's an unfixable problem with our current taxpayer base. We have to change that paradigm.
Yeah.
And if you want to start stimulating the economy so there's lots of people making over $200,000 a year and paying taxes, you have to liberate the people so that they can earn a living and make some money. And the standard of living in the United States is circling the drain. People are getting poor. You look at the number of credit card defaults. You look at just how much credit. It's over $1 trillion in rollover credit card debt now, which is telling you people are using their credit cards to survive. This isn't luxury spending. It's groceries. We've got to break that cycle and put money back in the American people's pocket so we can live our lives. Otherwise, we're serfs to the federal government.
Absolutely.
This is becoming, middle-aged Europe. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Tune in, folks. You see why? 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern, Eastman Financial, worldviewtube.com. And your website is what, Dan?
ProfessorEastman.com.
ProfessorEastman.com. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Take care.
You
Bye.
bet, my friend. Dan Eastman checking in. Check him out every day, 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern, worldviewtube.com. All right, folks. Now, you know that we had the power go down in Spain, France, and other places. This is, folks, why I carry my solar or my satellite phone with me everywhere. When we went to Milwaukee a few weeks ago, this was with me. I brought my Bivy, which allows me to text using my phone, but send the text not through a cell tower. The cell towers are down. I text on my phone, but send it through this Bivy to a satellite down to my family member who has one on the other end. These are not luxuries today, folks. These are not luxuries. These are necessities. And you can get the satellite phone for free. Free satellite phone when you sign up for one of their very reasonable monthly plans at worldviewtalk.com, okay? So when I go to D.C. next week, I'll have this with me. Okay? And we'll have under the motor coach, we'll have about 5-6 months worth of food, freeze-dried food. So this is not a joke, folks. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's important to be prepared. And don't panic, but be prepared. I also have a solar generator. I have the Delta Echo 400. I have this solar generator from Worldview Talk. And here they are right here. And you can get one. They're very reasonably priced. They range, from $899 to all the way up to more than that, depending on the size that you want, okay? I have the Delta Echo 400, okay? So check these things out. You might want to call because then they can answer your questions, okay? And you're probably going to have questions when it comes to solar generators. So use that 866 number and ask questions. 1-866-738-3224, 1-866-738-3224, okay? I have a solar generator, I have a satellite phone, and I have the bivvy. And I travel with the satellite phone, and I travel with that bivvy, okay? And I do also travel with a few solar devices for powering my iPhone, powering my solar satellite phone. I do. I have a few of the things that we sell in our store that are solar batteries, so you can keep that satellite phone charged. So you'll find that at worldviewstore.com. But for right now, I want you to go to worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. And if you are inclined to getting a generator, I would suggest you use the 866-738-3224 number. Remember, they also have bulletproof backpacks. Bulletproof, front and back, bulletproof, okay? And they have the cell phones that do not store your data. They do not track you. So check all that out, if you would, right now at worldviewtalk.com. Now, we're also, as I said, headed to Washington, D.C. this Friday. So we've got to not only bring in our normal revenue for the month, our support for the month, we've got to bring in additional funds for this trip, which is not inexpensive to take the motor coach out there with a driver and Logan, another cameraman. We've had to buy permits from the National Park Service. We have lodging. It's not an expensive trip, but we're going to be grabbing a lot. What happened to Worldview? Logan, did he? There we go. It's back. We're going to be producing a lot of programming that you're going to get. A lot of programming. And we're going to be filming. We'll be coming to you live from DC. We'll be filming a lot of stuff that's historic and coming back and post-editing, really educational, patriotic, historical stuff. And I look forward to telling you more. I'm not getting into a lot of details now because I don't want anyone disrupting us when we're out there filming. But you're going to be blown away. You really are. You're going to be blown away. You're going to think it's so cool, some of the stuff we're doing. And it's all going to be available for all of you. But we have to have the support to do this. So please go now. We need to have a big week this week to finish off raising the revenue we need to cover this trip. So please go to worldviewfoundation.com and make a contribution if you would right now. Worldviewfoundation.com. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address right there. You can use that mailing address right there. If you prefer to call and make a contribution over the phone, leave a voicemail for Melissa or text her at that number and she'll get back to you and you can make a contribution over the phone. If you do, we will send you a receipt on or around February 1st of 2026, okay? On or around February 1st of 2026, we send out our tax receipts with our EIN number for our foundation. And remember, we are a church. And so you can make contributions to us, and they are tax deductible by IRS rules, all right? And our foundation is our church and our Sunday night church service, okay? So worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Very important, we get your support right now for educational news, information, education, and ministry programming brought to you in part by our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. We have some important evidence that apparently has been released related to the JFK assassination files. Joining me now is Mark Shaw. He was a very popular guest the last time we had him on, and I hope you'll visit his website, which is, I think, markshawbooks.com, markshawbooks.com. Mark, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. And I want to start by hoping to get you to relax a little bit, because the last time I was on here, you surprised me and probably most of your audience by showing us a cabinet meeting. Yes. That was going on with the president, the vice president. I mean, all the big shots were there.
Yes.
And Tulsi Gabbard, I hope I'm saying her name right.
You are.
Said that, hey, guess what? We have 14 boxes of JFK assassination documents in our office. And, you know, that was kind of out of the blue, so I didn't know about them. Nobody did. So I want you to be able to relax, because they did finally go ahead and release
Wow.
those documents a
Really?
few days later, and there were some interesting things in there. So I thought we might start with that. But thanks for doing that. That was a real exclusive for you.
Well, thank you. Excellent. Well, I'm ready when you are. I think we have a document here, a press release on this one, right?
Well, let me just, if I may, tell you, this whole situation with the release of the documents, unfortunately, and I think that it's due to people hurrying to get all of this out. And I think that's from the top down. They should have taken more time to do this, because as we talked about the last time, when the documents came out, only a part of them came out. But then they left in the Social Security numbers and phone numbers of people back in the 60s. There's some lawsuits on that now and everything. And so I think they got ahead of themselves by trying to be able to promise to do what they wanted to. The other thing that was very disappointing, when I started looking into the documents, there were supposed to be 80,000, well, there's not. But also, it was disappointing because we were promised that the documents this time would not have those thick black lines through a lot of the material in them, and there are thick black lines in there still. Now, I've been told by somebody who's pretty close to to Tulsi Gabbard's office and so on and so forth, and I want to talk about a quote of hers that she just put out here recently, but that they're working on getting those redactions taken out, because we were promised, especially by the task force that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is co-chairman of, that we would really get everything this time. But let's look on the bright side and see what we have now. So let's explain to you. I'm a bit confused, and I don't get too confused too often, having been involved with the JFK assassination for, I don't know, almost 15 years, I suppose. But the testimony at the hearing, the first hearing the task force had, I sent you, it says important evidence based on the JFK assassination files released. In there, the main two witnesses were Jefferson Morley, who's, I think he believes he's an expert, and I think he is in many ways, and then the filmmaker, Oliver Stone. And I don't know if you watched any of that or not at all, Logan, but they made some rather startling, right off the bat, comments. The first one up there at the top, the evidence doesn't support that Oswald shot JFK. Well, what? Wait a minute, what? Well, we've always, the debate has always been what? That Oswald didn't act alone to shoot JFK, and right off the bat, Jefferson Morley is saying, well, he didn't even shoot Oswald. So then you can go ahead and look at the evidence that they brought up. And it's most interesting. They start off with the wounds to the president. And I give him credit for going ahead and doing his homework and discussing this with several of the physicians that were there, including this Dr. Robert McClellan, who's in the second paragraph there. And what they said is there was something called a blowout wound. In the third line, you'll see those words, blowout wound in the back of Kennedy's head, that had to have come from the front and would have not been fired by LHO, Lee Harvey Oswald. And so, no, I don't believe Oswald was responsible for Kennedy's death. The evidence doesn't support that claim. So, as you can imagine, that made headlines around the world. And he goes ahead and then backs it up right there with some things about what Dr. McClellan saw and everything when he saw the Zapruder film, and so on and so forth. So that was most important. I wanted to just get what's your reaction to that? Because it was shocking new evidence that had never come out before.
Well, that's obviously I'm excited about that, because I saw the I don't know what the documentary was called, but it was about the Parkland Hospital doctors, and I saw it and I thought every American should see this, because down to a man, not a one of them contradicted each other that I could see as I watched that. They all said that the head had a blowout in the back, and so totally against the narrative.
In the throat.
With the throat, and that the exit wound was from the back as well.
Exactly.
So obviously the shot had to come from the front, not from behind, from Oswald in the book depository. And all these guys, some of them were threatened, they were intimidated, they were threatened, and yet then they came together. And they all sat in a room, a lot of them together, detailing their story. And I thought, at the end of the day, these were the eyewitnesses that were there that are contradicting the Warren Commission, big time.
Yeah, what happens, I think, and we all have to be careful with this. People come up with a theory, and then they have to match everything, to prove that theory, and then leave out whatever you want to that's contrary to that theory. And we're going to find out as we go down just a few of these disclosures at the hearing that that's exactly what happened there. Nobody ever heard about those Parkland doctors for so long, and yet they, like you said, they were eyewitnesses. And I like to look at eyewitnesses, not speculation. I mean, Dorothy Kilgallen, as I said before, the journalist that we can talk about, was in Dallas. She was there, unlike all the other experts, including me. But the doctors were there, and so they saw what they saw. One of the things that you can garner from that, if we may, is the fact that, when this all happened, J. Edgar Hoover was out there shouting, "Oswald alone, Oswald alone." Well, why was he doing that? Because if it's a lone nut that killed the president, then, Logan, the FBI cannot be blamed for anything that happened. There's no way they could have known. Well, as they have found in these files and everything else, he was aware that there were other possibilities, that it wasn't just Oswald alone and all of that kind of thing. But he was very clever in going ahead. One of the first things he did, remember, was to basically steal that body of JFK's, put it in the plane going back, Air Force One, going back to the Capitol with Lyndon Johnson and poor Jackie in there. And then they took that body to a military base, and there were very unqualified individuals who ended up working on the autopsy. Cyril Weck, who passed away, unfortunately, one of the great forensic scientists we've ever had, said it was the worst autopsy he's ever seen.
Has he passed away? When did he pass away?
He did last year, and I was a great friend of his, and bless him, such a good man.
So articulate on this story.
Oh.
Now, do you believe, Mark, that the body of JFK, his body was actually put on Air Force One and brought back, or do you believe it was diverted to another plane, as some are saying, and some surgery was done on the president's head? Do you believe his body was really on the plane of Air Force One going back, or not? What is your speculation on that?
I do. I do, because otherwise you have to speculate. You have to speculate about where it happened. I've even heard from people who say there was a double for JFK after the assassination, but I don't think we need to go that far with those kinds of things. But Hoover was very smart.
I agree with you, by the way, because I'm thinking to myself, if the Secret Service were battling as they were to get a hold of his body, do you really think they're going to let somebody else grab it from them and put it on another plane, right?
Anything's possible, as you know. But
I agree with you. I think his body was actually put on, what is it, 26,000 is the tail number?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, 26,000. You know, you can go and visit that plane and walk on that plane. It's at the Air Force Museum.
I always wanted to be on that plane as president, Logan, and it just didn't happen. I don't know why. It just didn't happen. Anyway.
Well, you can go and visit and walk through that plane.
And feel like I'm the president.
Yeah, exactly. You can. You absolutely can.
Go down a little bit further in this list I gave you.
Okay.
The next thing they do in 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs is the fact that all of these witnesses, I think they recount 21 witnesses, police officers, everybody, all went to the Grassy Knoll. Now, this conflicts a little bit with what Dorothy Kilgallen found out from Jesse Curry, the Dallas police chief, because he said everybody went in the direction of the overpass, but the overpass and the Grassy Knoll are very close there. So obviously then that's a confirmation that they came up with that shows that the shots came from the front, not from the back. All right.
So let me ask you that right then. So do you think the shots came from the Grassy Knoll, or do you think they came from the overpass?
I'll tell you what, I almost have to go with what Jesse Curry said, because he said when he heard the shots, he sent his officers to the overpass. But I will relent to the fact that what Morley and his group have found could very well be possible. They're right there together, as you know.
So you think it came from the Grassy Knoll?
I have to go with Jesse Curry.
And that's what he
came from the overpass, but they're right there together. So.
Okay, so you think it came from the overpass. What do you make of the documentary, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, that used to air on History Channel for years and years in the early 90s and then stopped? It's like 5 hours long. And they have a guy that claimed that he was standing there, a military guy that was, in Dallas that day, filming with his little camera And he says a shot came ringing right over his ear. You know about that guy, right?
Yeah, I know it. I know about that. Did you think he was credible?
He seemed it to me, particularly when they got him by his pool later that night, and they produce a photo to him that they'd blown up and then colorized that looked like the outline of his hat, his military hat.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he starts tapping the paper, and he gets all choked up and says, that's me. And he says, if I had seen this photograph before I gave you the interview, I wouldn't have given you the interview, because now this is proof that what I'm saying is true, and now I feel like I'm at risk. It also seems to show Badgeman. It seems to show a muzzle lit up with a man that looks like he has a badge, Badgeman, which is...
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't recall.
And then he details a guy, a railroad worker with a white shirt and a railroad hat, and I think he's also one of the three guys in the picture, standing off. And he says that when the Badgeman was done shooting, they took the gun and they took it apart, put it back in the toolbox. The railroad worker shut it, walked on down the railroad track, and Badgeman walked off.
Could very well be possible. There's no question about that. So I think when you hear those kind of things, you have to take them into account. You know, my books, all of them, are stop and think books.
Yep.
I don't try to tell the reader, you know, I'm a former criminal defense lawyer. I write books like I talk to juries, just giving them the facts. And so I like for people to make up their own mind, but I always tell them, don't believe me. And that's one of the problems I think we talked about the last time. The right questions weren't asked back in 1963. I'm hoping they're being asked now. Now, if you look at this, the next thing that they go to is interesting, because Jefferson Morley says, Oswald was not the intellectual author of the assassination, probably the CIA or the FBI. This is where I would really quarrel with what he said, because he doesn't back it up with any evidence whatsoever. And they needed to do that. The panel there, sorry, I'm going to have a drink of water. The panel there were able to just throw out all of these startling comments. And nobody, when the congressmen or women people really asked the questions about the details there. So nobody said, well, why do you think it's CIA or FBI? That was a problem. The other thing is they found out, and we'd heard this before, I think you'll agree, Logan, was that they had problems matching the rifle to the one that Oswald used. They had problems with the bullets. They had problems with a lot of things, but one of them was really startling in that Oliver Stone went ahead and pointed out that there were 3 women, and maybe you've heard this before, in the book depository. I think 2 of them were on the 4th floor, 1 on the 2nd floor. And when they heard the shots, they went down the stairs to the door there, and they waited. They have testified, but never in front of the Warren Commission. They weren't called, that they never saw Lee Harvey Oswald. And what I like, Oliver Stone's comment, he said there were only 30 seconds or so. He was on the 6th floor, which I sincerely doubt, and had to be a track star to store the weapon, run across the floor, and go down those stairs. And there appeared a woman named Marion Baker on the 2nd floor, and she never saw him either. So what they're trying to say is that Oswald not only didn't shoot JFK, but he was not in a position to have been in the book depository. And that's what's so interesting, because, you know, there's all that hubbub with the 6th floor museum, which I believe is a very, very much of a scam. It's a shrine to Oswald. They don't really give all the information about it. But it may appear now that sniper's den, or whatever they called it, on that 6th floor, maybe it wasn't even there. I don't know at the time. So that's the things that they did, and the good information that they brought out. I do have problems with Morley just speculating CIA or FBI, and we can talk about that. Have you always had a theory as to who may have been involved in the JFK assassination? Because Morley says he cannot identify exactly who killed JFK, and he cannot identify who he believes was what he called the architect of the JFK assassination. In other words, who planned it. Which is kind of disappointing in some ways.
Well, I'll have to say that my analysis of this largely started in the early 90s when I watched the 7-hour documentary on the men who killed Kennedy, if you remember that. 7 hours, right? And and then I, of course, later met Roger Stone and read his book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy. And I think that if I had to guess who did it, I would say the CIA was involved. It helped to orchestrate it. And I think that it was Operation Mongoose that was, I think, the CIA plan to assassinate Castro. And all the people and the players and the money, I think, was turned away from Castro and it was turned onto Kennedy. Now, if the Men Who Killed Kennedy documentary is accurate, and I think I know the whole 7 hours is on YouTube because I'm looking at it right now. There was a report in there that in one of the papers, Robert F. Kennedy was quoted as saying to one of the guys involved with Operation Mongoose, he was quoted as saying, one of your guys killed my brother. And he was referring reportedly to Oswald, meaning he had known who Oswald was, that Oswald may have in some way been involved in Operation Mongoose. And I've always wondered if Oswald wasn't dipped and painted as a communist and communist sympathizer and defected, as that was common then to be able to get our people overseas. And then, of course, he comes back, which is really interesting. I always believed that he was probably involved in Operation Mongoose and was somehow CIA, military intelligence, whatnot. And now I think there's some pay stubs that have come out showing that he was being paid by the intelligence arena. So I kind of always believed that Oswald was set up. And if I had to guess, it was the CIA that was really helping to orchestrate this. And then I think you add in the mob. Of course, I think the mob and the CIA had worked together. So I think there was a lot of players in this that had various reasons. Like when people go to war, they don't all go to war for the same end game, the same motive. Yeah. I think when people organize an assassination, they don't all do it for the same reason, but they all want the guy eliminated.
Yeah, that's good. I like that analysis because you're kind of keeping an open mind in terms of what could happen back there. I think one of the biggest problems with Oswald still was motive. Right. One of the things he said that, in fact, connects with my research into Robert Kennedy's death was, I'm a patsy. I'm a patsy. And the same thing, I think, is what happened based on my new research as far as Sirhan goes with the death of Robert Kennedy, if you want to talk about that today. But I've always had trouble with the motive in terms of the CIA, because you have to speculate. There's so many loops you have to go through to figure out exactly what happened there. Same with the military establishment, the Cubans or whatever. I was able to see that Morley has admitted that one of the things he's looking for in an interview that I saw he did, he said he's looking for 15 JFK documents. And one of them in there is the Carlos Marcello file, and the other is the Carlos Marcello tapes, which I've been trying to find and can't, but maybe you can help me with that. Because again, I think we talked about the fact that one of the motives involved with this goes back to that 1960 election, Logan, when JFK, they thought they were going to lose the election. Joe Kennedy called in some of his buddies, Giancana and Marcello, and all of them, help us. Yeah, help us win the election. We'll leave you alone. And then Bobby went right after Marcello and sent him to Central America and all that. And you can't mess around with those Mafia guys. And I think that some of the new evidence, especially that's where Dorothy Kilgallen went with this, especially after she interviewed Jack Ruby. Remember, she's the only reporter out of 400 people in the courtroom there to have ever represented Jack Ruby. And that was the book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, that talked about all that. And that's available at markshawbooks.com, by the way, by Mark. It is, yes. And Denial of Justice, I think people would enjoy that book because it has the Ruby trials transcripts in there. And there's a lot of information in there about that. But she really believed, after talking to Oswald, we don't know exactly what she said because they stole her files and her manuscript for a book she was writing for Random House right after she died. But where did she go? She went to New Orleans. And she interviewed a lot of people who knew Marcello and got a lot of information in terms of that whole, of him being the architect of knocking off JFK so Bobby Kennedy would be powerless. And what's interesting about that, the other document I sent you, you might take a look at. This is what I mean It's the confession by Carlos Marcello. Now, this is what I mean about the fact that when you have a theory, and you want to be careful not to provide any facts that go against that theory, you just leave it out. So we certainly at the hearing didn't hear anything about the Marcello confession that took place. And it took place in 1985. He was in prison in Texas. It's quite fascinating. Whether you want to believe it or not is the question, because as you know, when the mafia is involved in keeping your mouth shut. Thank you, and people can read that. But in this situation, it seems reasonable that this could have happened. It was at the Federal Correctional Institute in Texas, and I've looked into this. The guy's name was Van Landingham there. It's in an FBI file, and it talks about the fact that Van Landingham was in prison for robbing a bank or something like that, got 8 years in prison. He became friends with Carlos Marcello, finally was able to be in the same cell with him, and there was a whistleblower inside the prison who connected him with the FBI. They went ahead and taped this confession, supposedly, where Carlos Marcello said, referring to the president, yeah, I killed the SOB. Yes, I had the SOB killed. I'm glad I did. I'm sorry I couldn't have done it myself. Now, this is an account that people can make up their own mind out about. But if you looked at motive in terms of why Marcello would have wanted to go ahead and eliminate JFK, it makes some sense. And I will just say quickly, I don't know how much you want to go into RFK, but I think I mentioned this the last time. So Marcello has gotten rid of JFK, which makes RFK, Bobby Kennedy, powerless. But wait a minute, now RFK is going to run for president 5 years later in 1968, and he knows the first thing that Bobby Kennedy will do if he wins the presidency is come after Marcello. So I believe he went ahead, and I found this eyewitness nobody ever has known about, who worked at one of the racetracks in Southern California that was controlled by Mickey Cohen, who was an associate of Marcello. And I believe, based on this account, that they recruited Sirhan. They knew about his gambling debts. They knew about his being broke. And they knew about he hated Robert Kennedy, as I'm going to prove in the new book, Abuse Justice. I can't even think of the name of my own book. Anyway, this that's coming out this fall. That they recruited him. My eyewitness saw Sirhan with two hoodlums, he called them, about 2 days before the death of Robert Kennedy at Hollywood Park, and called Hollywood Park when there was Sirhan's photograph on the television, and said, it said, "Do you know this man?" And this eyewitness went ahead and called the authorities. Unfortunately, or deliberately, they never got in touch with him. But you can string all that together with Marcello because, again, based on motive, he wanted to kill RFK to begin with. He had to wait 5 years to do so.
Wow.
Abuse of Power is the name of the book, by the way.
Wow. MarkShawBooks.com. I want to play for you real quick a little piece from the men who killed Kennedy.
Oh, good. Please.
I found this spot. It was like a 7-hour documentary, but I found the spot while you were talking. Here we go. Listen to this. Here we go, Logan.
Please.
The gunman is in this picture. And I think they knew the evening of the assassination that there was a second gunman up in the Grassy Knoll. The medical evidence as it exists now does not indicate a shot from the front. But we do have to understand that if Badgeman was firing, and if it was Badgeman's shot that struck the president in the head, that means the medical evidence has been altered. And there you've got conspiracy existing within the United States government.
Despite the government, Gordon Arnold is certain of what he saw.
The training that I just finished, they were shooting live ammunition over us. And when a bullet goes past your ear and your eardrum feels like it's coming out the other side of your head, it's close. That's why I thought I was shot. There's no doubt in my mind that I was there. And it did occur.
Further verification of Gordon's presence on the Knoll comes from a surprising source, Senator Yarborough.
During that shooting, my eye was attracted to the right. I saw a movement, and I saw a man just jump about 10 feet like at the old-time flying tackle in football and land against the wall. I thought to myself, there's an infantryman who's either been shot at in combat or he's been trained thoroughly. The minute you hear firing, get under cover.
This colorized version of the Badgeman picture was shown to Gordon Arnold for the first time. He has always believed there was no proof of his presence on the Knoll that day.
Looks like a soldier in summer uniform with an overseas cap on. It looks like it would have been my uniform.
Wow.
It looks like there's a camera. Or there's something up in front of the face. It looks like a white spot. If it's a flash, it would be like off of a muzzle flash. This looks like a police officer because that would be the badge. That would be the arm emblem. Would this fella back here be the railroad man I asked you about this morning? Because when I was walking to the site, and I had never told anybody that I had, when we were out there filming, it reminded me that there was a railroad worker just standing out there by the railroad tracks. But it looks like somebody's taking a picture. Yeah, I couldn't figure out why would I be standing crooked until I flipped that up, and if that's a muzzle blast or flash, then whoever's standing there would have been a fool to stand up straight. He'd been trying to get away from harm's way is what it boils down to. And that could very well be me. Son of a gun. That would be the closest thing that I've ever, to be honest with you, the picture bothers me because if this is a true thing of what has occurred, then I could be the only one that shot the man. They killed the president. And to be honest with you, if I'd have known this, I wouldn't have given me any interview. He said it's too close to home right now.
If the figure is real, then that means the witnesses were correct and the researchers who have spoken of conspiracy for 25 years now were also correct. It means the Warren Commission was wrong. There was a conspiracy. The question then is, who was involved in the conspiracy? And alongside with that is, was Lee Harvey Oswald involved in the conspiracy? One of the good things the Warren...
And there they go on, and they describe why they think Oswald was a setup. That guy, if I remember correctly, that man says that someone came along in a dark suit, white shirt, dark suit, kicked him, demanded his camera, opened it up, took the film, and walked off.
Yeah, I think, Logan, you know, that kind of account hits me hard because that is an eyewitness account. And you can tell that man is very emotional about what happened.
Yep.
But I'm telling you right now, that information was never in the Warren Commission report. He was I bet you he was never even interviewed by them. And that's what's sad about this. I have sent another letter to Congresswoman Luna asking if the permission to contribute my research to their investigation and hopefully even testify at the next hearing. And one of the reasons I've said that is because I think if Jefferson Morley is correct and Oliver Stone's correct and everything, we now have to go back and revisit all of the, what people thought were crazy conspiracy theories or plots to kill the president, like that particular account there, because it very well may be that this gentleman who seems like, he couldn't tell a lie if he tried to, is very credible in what he did. So maybe what's going to happen here, and there's a lot of documents that are still out there, that this is going to be a revisit to an awful, I've had people at times get in touch with me and be very upset. I'm a conspiracy theorist because I think that, Dorothy was wrong about all this, and Marcella wasn't involved in everything. But now everybody has to go back and take a deep breath, especially an awful lot of people, and I don't want to name names, I don't like to criticize others, but an awful lot of people who wrote these Oswald Alone books better look themselves in the mirror and say, wait a minute, we need to reevaluate an awful lot of the evidence that's come forth now.
Wow, we sure do. Let me show for you, before we let you go, the trailer. This is by Paramount, the men who's, this is amazing. Here you go, watch this.
You replay that day in your mind, and it never goes away.
Something has happened, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade.
There has been an attempt on the life of President Kennedy.
We heard Kennedy had been shot and was being brought to the emergency room at Parkland Hospital. You think, my goodness, I'm about to take care of the president.
What happened in Trauma Room 1 never came out, never became public.
I was there, I remember it in detail. It's etched in my memory forever.
We got the EKG machine in. There was just a straight line.
Straight line.
Straight line.
We thought that there was an entrance wound in the neck.
Parkland doctors were a serious problem for the U.S. government.
And an exit wound in the back of the head.
Because they provided evidence that there was a shooter somewhere in the front.
In all probability, there was more than one shooter.
Everything changed as soon as JFK's body left Parkland Hospital.
When I saw the autopsy pictures, it made me very suspicious.
Certain people in our government tampered with critical evidence to make sure the American people would not know the truth about who murdered the president. And that's about as bad as it gets. Someone told me you must never, ever say that was an entrance wound again if you know what's good for you.
Parkland doctors are telling us the truth, beyond any and all doubt.
They have not deviated from what they observed 60 years ago.
Will people feel that they have a better understanding of what actually happened? Absolutely.
Yeah, and when I watched that, I was like, whoo, that documentary was so compelling to me. Have you seen it also?
I watched it. I want to watch it a couple more times, though. I wasn't going to comment on it today because I wanted to go back through exactly what they were saying, especially with regard to what now Jefferson Morley and other people are coming forward with. But again, remember, none of that was in the Warren Commission report, you see, because once J. Edgar Hoover and LBJ and Allen Dulles, all of them with the Warren Commission, when they come up with that theory about Oswald alone, they are never going to deviate with that. And it's just sad. It's disturbing because this is about history. You're a historian, so am I. So it's very upsetting to me, and I'm trying to do my part at least, and so are you, to make sure that maybe we can correct some of these things, because unfortunately, through the years, that Oswald alone theory has been perpetuated forever, and now it apparently turns out Oswald wasn't even involved in the shooting of JFK.
Exactly, which means they really persecuted a guy to his death, and his wife and family and the family name and everything. Wow. Mark, so you're saying all this information we've been discussing today has come out in April from those files that Tulsi Gabbard talked about in that cabinet meeting. So this is all new information.
I think it is. There's some that corroborates other material. I found a couple of references to Dorothy Kilgallen in there. One has to do with Marcello and her investigation. The other had to do with Johnny Rosselli. I'm sure you know that name. You remember what happened to him when his body parts were found in that barrel in Miami Harbor or whatever. So there were a couple things in there about that. I want to just quickly shift in just a little time we have left to Robert Kennedy, because he's kind of being left out of all of this in terms of what happened to him. And did he make mistakes in his life? Yes, he did, and all of that. But he still should have gotten a fair shake in terms of what happened to him. And they just rushed out there and decided it was Sirhan. The trial was a travesty. They didn't look into alternatives in terms of what happened to him, and so on and so forth. So, he was always wanting to be known in terms of his abilities and everything, like JFK. And what happens at the end? They both were denied justice, in my opinion. Both JFK and RFK were denied justice when they died because the investigations were worse than if they'd investigated my death or yours. And these were two very, very important people in history. So I feel badly for Robert Kennedy and for his son right now, although his son has kind of given some different accounts of what his father told him right after JFK died. But it's just really unfortunate. I think it's a scar on our country, because just like that man should have been heard, he should have, but why didn't people focus on him? And they didn't. They believed. Back then, we believed in the FBI. We believed in the government and so on and so forth. We've lost a lot of that. I hope we can get it back. But back then, whatever J. Edgar Hoover said was golden, and that was it. And so people never looked any further than what he said about Oswald.
And they sure should have. MarkShawBooks.com, MarkShawBooks.com, and as you go there, scroll down the page, you'll see all of his books that you can get a hold of. And Mark will be back, because you know there's going to be more information coming out. So Mark will be back discussing this very important topic, that justice needs to be done. The people need to be told what happened, because I think we got some deep state actors. They're still around to this day. Not the same people per se, but the same system. The power elite, as some past presidents have even warned about. MarkShawBooks.com. Mark, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Logan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bet. Mark Shaw checking in tonight, MarkShawBooks.com. All right, folks, before we go, take a look at the screen here again, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I want you to go to worldviewwater.net. Worldviewwater.net. I drink this water every day, folks, every day. I have this under my sink. This is the water I drink. The Century H2O takes out all of these nasty chemicals that I don't want to drink. I don't want my family drinking, right? I don't want my granddaughter drinking. I don't want my pets drinking these things, which I think cause cancer. I think some of it's been proven to cause cancer, right? So I'm not making a claim. I think we all know this, right? Do you want to drink this? I don't. Food is medicine and clean water. Food as medicine and clean water. Go to worldviewwater.net, worldviewwater.net, or worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You'll find the link to it. You need to get one of these. You can also get one for your shower. I have that one, the bottom right. That's the one for the shower. I have one on my shower as well. Worldviewwater.net, or just go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You'll find all our sponsors there, folks. And please do business with them, because this is so important to help keeping this network going. Don't forget about the Worldview Coffee. WorldviewCoffee.shop. That is 1775 coffee, right, Logan? And it's not sprayed. It's organic, not sprayed. So please check that out as well. And of course, remember now, foundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. So important that we have the next 2 weeks be big weeks for us, so that we can cover the expenses and the cost related to this trip to DC to bring you free programming. You're going to love it, folks. We need your support. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Hey, don't forget also, you can get the free business cards, a pack of 20 free business cards. We have now sent out, like 15,000 of these, printed double-sided, absolutely free. And you can give them out to family and friends or people you meet that you think might enjoy the free programming of Worldview Tube. Just hand it to them and say, hey, here's a network I think you might enjoy listening to. Watch and listen for 30 days. See if you're not better informed. Let's see what they say. What's the worst? It's free. You know, what's the worst they can do, right? Worldviewstore.com. Hey, thanks for watching and listening and praying for us. Hey, God save America. Take care. July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from this from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign. And Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy. I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I can eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer, and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is the phytoplankton is microscopic. It's God's microscopic food. And the Gaditana is the most nutritionally comprehensive strain phytoplankton in the world. David Hunter studied phytoplankton for 20 years because he worked for Tom Harper and he was there in person and witnessed Tom's recovery. It's about getting pure nutrition inside your cells. And what happens, your body balances again or goes back to homeostasis. And when your body is pH balanced or in homeostasis, disease can't grow. It is literally microscopic, pure single cell plant food with protein and omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6 fatty acids, with amino acids and vitamins and minerals. 1 scoop a day. There's 90 billion plant cells in here just for everyday nutrition and energy and, cognitive support, because this is God's pure nutrition.
Go to melissahousegpa.com today. Discover the science and learn more about the wonderful benefits of Gaditana phytoplankton. That's melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com.
And welcome to the Worldview 2 Washington Report for today, April 28th, 2025. Glad you are with us. Joining me, of course, is our co-host, Jim Paff. Jim is in Indiana, but he'll be returning soon to Washington, D.C., and we're leaving, of course, Friday. Headed for the nation's capital, we have passes to be up on Capitol Hill to set up, to interview members of the House and the Senate. We have White House press passes for the week. We have a lot of great interviews set up. And again, we need your support to make it happen because we're going to be bringing this all to you for free as a part of our broadcast programming, news, information, education, and sometimes ministry programming as well, right? We need your support. Please consider going now to worldviewfoundation.com. Help us bring in the necessary funds to not only cover our normal monthly requirements, but also the special project we're doing requires extra funds. So please dig deep this month if you can and help us with that as we leave this Friday. Be reporting to you from our nation's capital. Worldview, we've been working on this for months behind the scenes, by the way, getting all the passes that are required, all the Secret Service background checks, paying the Park Service, the different permits for filming at historical sites. It's going to be great fun, and we look forward to putting it together, bringing you some amazing programming through the spring and summer when we get back and get it all post-edited. Some of it we'll be doing and bringing to you right out of the chute. I mean, some of it will broadcast live from there. Some of it we'll be filming and popping it out to you as well. So you're going to be a part of it, and you make it possible when you go to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Joining me now is Jim Paff. Jim, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us. So when do you head back to D.C., my friend?
Well, driving back on the weekend, so you'll beat me a little bit, but I'll be there shortly.